Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Anne, and I will be your host today for this webinar. So before we begin, could you please type in the chat box where you're joining us from? We love to see how international our audience is. Make sure you're writing to everyone. You can choose this from the drop-down box. I can already see we have some people joining us from India, from Austria, from England. Hello from England as well. Iran, Nigeria, Poland, more India, more London, South Africa, Ethiopia, Italy, Tanzania, Brazil, China. Okay, wow, this is super international. But believe it or not, this is not even close to what you're going to be experiencing in class. So let me show you a short video before while we wait for everyone to connect. Okay.
There's plenty of research and articles out there identifying that there's a skills gap between what businesses are looking for and what students actually graduate with. That's why we have built all our graduate programs around bridging that skills gap, ensuring that HALT grads have the critical skills needed from day one on the job, while also continuing to grow throughout their entire career. But you can't obtain those skills from books and lectures. Just like a top athlete, musician, or learning how to ride a bike, you must develop these essential skills through constant practice and feedback. And being a school that has never followed the status quo, we design a program that provides exactly that.
The foundation of HALT's graduate programs is the fact that every module and every program is built around a practical challenge, whether it's a hackathon, a team project, a simulation, or real business seeking out your ideas and solutions through a consulting project. The programs are designed to reflect how the actual business world works. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're taking a module that includes financial analysis, marketing strategy, and leadership. At the end of the module, you'll be working on a live simulation. You'll be assigned to a team that will run a company, and you and 4 or 5 other teams will be given identical resources. Your team will make every decision, from product features to pricing to marketing to sales strategies, and even production, as you do battle in this business war game.
And every module will help you develop those critical human skills that transcend any job, function, or industry. No matter what your career goals are, the ability to communicate effectively and collaborate with others from diverse backgrounds will be the key to your success and professional growth. Things will get more difficult as the core program progresses. That's good. It is designed to encourage you to try early on and learn from your mistakes, versus demanding perfection right from the beginning, the way people are naturally built to learn. Finally, you'll delve deeper or go broader by choosing electives that suit your interests and career goals. But you don't take this intense journey alone. Program deans, like me, are experts in their field and can guide you in making the right choices, so you take those electives and specializations that will put you in the strongest possible position to achieve your individual career goals come graduation.
Also with you, every step of the way from the moment you arrive is your dedicated career coach. We'll work closely with you from day one of your program and guide you through your entire journey. We get to know you, your personal circumstances, and your goals. So whether you're an engineer from India looking for a marketing role in the UK, or a biochemist from Germany wanting to start your own business, we'll work with you on your next best move.
Okay, so hello and welcome everyone to HALT's Virtual Skills Lab. This forum is an online global meeting space offering you the opportunity to skill up and get ahead from the comfort of your own home. Connect with like-minded go-getters from all over the globe and hear from world-class HALT professors on the latest topics and trends in live interactive workshops and webinars. For those of you who are joining a HALT event for the first time, let me give you a little bit of background about us. So HALT has designed a school that focuses on developing your leadership skills, challenging you with future-oriented curriculum and building a global perspective that only first-hand experience can bring. From our undergraduate program through to specialized masters, full-time and part-time MBAs, as well as live online options, we bring together creative, open-minded people from all over the world to do business, not just study it. HALT, for those made to do. If you would like more information on our programs and the upcoming scholarship deadlines, please head to halt.edu. Today, we are joined by Hall Professor Margaretta James to explore the topic of outfit of the day, the psychology behind how you present yourself. Before I introduce her, I would like to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded and will be sent to everyone via email in the next few days. The masterclass will last approximately 45 minutes with another 15 minutes for questions. So please make sure you write your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box. So it's easier for us to find them at the end of the class. Margaretta is a professor of leadership and personal development at Halt International Business School. She draws from her business, psychology, neuroscience, and coaching consultancy background to enable current and future leaders to get the results they seek through maximizing their potential and ultimate well-being. She also designs and delivers executive level learning and development programs and has worked with senior executives from companies including Rolls-Royce, Google, IBM, and many others. Margaretta's work and thinking attracts much media interest via various media channels, newspapers, and magazines, including the BBC, Financial Times, MTV1, and many more. Margaretta is also the founder and director of the Harley Street Wellbeing Clinic. With that said, let me hand over the presentation to Professor Margaretta James.
Oh, hello, everybody. It's really lovely to be with you this afternoon. And thank you very much for the lovely introduction. I can see that you are from all sorts of different countries, including, people from India. We had a session this morning at 7 o'clock UK time, where we had a bunch of people joining us, probably the similar number in their 50s like you guys are. And, we had loads of people from some of these countries as well, but not too many from England, as you can tell, because we were really early in the morning. And we even had people from Germany as well. So you're from Nigeria, Poland, London again. I'm just west of London in Oxfordshire at the moment, in a sunny-ish countryside, which is really quite nice. I can see that we've got people from Ethiopia, Italy, Brazil, China, Sierra Leone, all of these amazing places, Kenya, Nigeria, Africa, again from London as well, Ireland. I hope you're getting some sun up there, Rick, in Ireland. Even from Brazil as well. So we've got some sunny places and some not so sunny places at the moment as well. So we had, I think, as far as I can look back, I mean, I've been with Halt for the past 5.5 years, and time just flew past, and I love every minute of it. But we had, I remember, in 140 something different nationalities last year in the class. So lots of people from lots of different kind of backgrounds, different cultures. It is a really diverse environment, and really, really amazingly challenging in good ways and in really difficult ways as well for people to work in an international environment as well. But if you're open-minded, if you're ready for the challenge, I think it's an absolutely fantastic environment to learn in a very, very safe place, in a way that you couldn't quite do it in any other setting. So you can make your mistakes, you can learn from them, you can learn and grow, you can try yourself in different situations, you can start to hone in those skills that you will actually need for your work environment when you actually leave and graduate Halt. What we are doing at the moment is, this is now mid-May, so the current students we have on our programs have now got to the stage when they are finishing their final challenges. They are actually finishing their core modules, and then they are going to be moving into the summer electives. As Anne said to you in the introduction, I teach leadership at Halt and personal development. My background is in psychology and in neuroscience, hence the session today about the psychology behind clothing and what we are wearing, and first impressions and perceptions of people of us as a result of that. And we go into a lot of these topics over the year as we go through our year at Halt, really digging deep into why it's really, really important for you guys to understand people more and understand, the people who you are managing, because you will be getting things done through the people within your organization. And I really and truly believe that it's incredibly important for you to become very, very good at people. And of course, it all starts with understanding yourself. So today, what we are going to be doing today is I'm going to share my screen quickly, and I'm going to talk you through some of the importance of why it's really important for you to think about how you actually present yourself. And we are going to be making it really quite interactive. So I'm going to be opening up the chat. I'm going to get you to do a poll on Mentimeter because I'm really curious about your opinions. So I really want to kind of make it into interactive rather than just talking at you. And then at the end of all of this, we are going to have a Q&A. So really welcome all of your questions. I managed to answer all the questions in the last session, so that was really good. So a little bit about myself. So as Anne said, I teach, I consult, I work with leaders, I work with C-level executives and executive teams. I worked with a number of different organizations that some of them you recognize on this slide. Going back the past 20 years. And I also work with the media. So I get asked about all sorts of different topics relating to psychology and work and well-being and leadership and the challenges of managing people and organizations in the media. So I tend to work with them as well really closely. Now, today, we've got about half an hour to cover this topic, and then I'm going to open up for questions. What we are talking about today is really the psychology behind how we present ourselves and why it's so important. Now, before I jump into this topic, what I'm really curious about knowing, and I'm going to open up the chat so I can see what everybody else is saying, is what would you have been thinking if I turned up to this session wearing a hoodie, for example? So, one of those jumpers with a hood. What would you have thought? Would you have thought, that's really strange, or, I'm not quite sure. What would have been your kind of first impression or perception of me turning up to this talk as a hoodie? And just be as honest as you want to be. It's kind of like a similar situation as, say, you going to your doctor's surgery and then them sitting there in a hoodie. So what sort of impression would you have had of me if I turn up in a hoodie? I'm just going to give you a minute to type in your answers. Please just use the chat function. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so you would think that you wouldn't be taking the session seriously. Okay. Unprofessional. Okay, interesting. It would have been different to what you have expected. So what you're saying there is you have expected maybe a more of a formal clothing. Okay. Okay, confident and reflective of a dress code post-COVID. Really interesting, Emma. So what do you mean by that? What do you mean by confident and reflective? Because in the COVID environment, we have been working from home quite a lot. And I know that people have been wearing clothing that makes them feel more confident. And I'm going to go into the psychology of all of this, because I think this is really, really important to know how you can manage your performance and, how you can actually perform even better just through the clothing that you're wearing. Okay. Never judge a book by its cover of clothing. Really interesting. Yes, very, very true. On the face of it, it would look that it would be casual, but it might be a way for you to be cooling off before applying yourself to the task. Okay. Dress codes seem to have changed. Yes, absolutely, since home working kicked in. And in some companies, you can see this as well. So in some companies, the dress code is more casual. In some industries, it's still the same. So for example, financial services tends to be very, still very formal, very kind of suit focused. However, really interestingly, you could actually think that in certain settings, a suit would be completely irrelevant and inappropriate, because really interestingly, what other people's perception would be of you would be managed in a very, very different way. So you would think that I'm not so interested in presenting, and maybe I would be interested in creating a cozy atmosphere, okay? Or for some of you, it would signal confidence and the availability to carry out assigned projects and duties. Okay, well, let me tell you that underneath all of my formal clothing, I am in fact wearing a hoodie, and I'm going to take my jacket off, actually, because this is not a piece of clothing that I actually own. This is actually a piece of clothing that I borrowed from my son. And it is, in fact, a hoodie, because I don't actually own a hoodie. But this is a hoodie that I actually put on just to see what you think of the first impressions. So now, this is really, really important, because what I'm going to talk to you about a little bit now is, it is a Mickey Mouse hoodie. Yes, that's right. So what I want to talk to you about now is first impressions, and why first impressions are so important. So first impressions, people talk about not judging a book by its cover. However, first impressions are really important in certain settings. So you need to choose the moment when you can get away with your own style, in fact, go against the grain and actually start to present yourself and turn up in something else than what is socially expected. Or you can actually feel that you need to really follow what the situation is requiring from you. So for example, in a professional setting, so in a doctor's surgery, in a situation when you're doing a formal presentation to a client, when you're doing a formal presentation or a negotiation situation you are entering, there are lots of different situations, or a job interview. But job interviews can be really funny as well, because depending on the culture and the context of certain job interviews, you may be required to actually follow the unwritten rules of the company and actually turn up in clothing that is going to be relevant to that particular setting. Okay, so we had a number of students going into the fashion industry, and you wouldn't be able to kind of turn up for an interview in a suit in a fashion industry, for example. So it's really, really interesting because first impressions are something that we can't help. So this is not something that, we are jumping to conclusions with people. But what I'm talking to you about here is that first impressions are related to evolution, and first impressions are related to the primal brain, because what we look at and what the brain is scanning for is whether we are safe, and whether the person who we are looking at and the person who is approaching us is actually a friend or an enemy. So this is all about understanding that the primal brain scans the environment for any sort of danger. And if they tend to be similarly dressed than us, then we feel comfortable and the brain settles down into that comfort. Now, beyond all of this, what we actually wear in certain situations can impact how we feel, how others perceive us, which is what we have been talking about and you have been writing about. Also work productivity, but beyond that, it can also impact problem solving. We can even become more creative. Now, what sort of clothing do we need to be wearing to be doing this? Now, I'm going to show you a few studies in a moment that will talk about this, actually. But when you think about why we kind of wear what we do, is that we really express ourselves through clothing. So sometimes as we go through life and different chapters in life, we actually start to prefer different types of clothing. We feel a certain way when we are actually wearing clothing because essentially clothes are our second skin. And there are, of course, societal and cultural norms that we need to follow in certain situations. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is communicating through clothing. So what sort of things we communicate, how we feel in clothing. So one of you mentioned COVID here, or a couple of you mentioned COVID here, actually. And you said that basically home working became normal throughout COVID, and working from home is quite normal. So we have seen a number of videos on YouTube. I don't know whether you've seen them, of people doing Zoom meetings and then kind of getting up from the computer, and then they would have formal clothing on the top, and then they would have jogging pants or whatever, because they were just kind of dressing for the camera setting. Now, there are psychological implications of what this means when we are actually wearing formal clothing, and I'm going to show you a study on that a little bit later on. Also, casual clothing and what it communicates. So, if you think about situations when you see CEOs, for example, or certain company leaders turning up in casual clothing at work, you can think about what that communicates about them in terms of where they are and how they are actually dressing. We tend to think about clothing in categories. So we tend to think about formal clothing, casual clothing. We tend to think about occasions. So for example, Friday night, kind of clothing, or party dresses, or occasions that we actually dress up for, like weddings and all sorts of different ceremonies and graduations. And we manage the power of perception through this, and we are projecting certain messages to other people. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about a little bit is managing and creating these perceptions on purpose, and how important this actually is. Although, a lot of people argue that there's certain rules for clothing, they also argue that it's really, really important for you to be able to express yourself, to become individual, and actually start to kind of shape your personal brand through your clothing as well. So that becomes a part of the arguments, like, do we go with, the traditional and what's expected, or do we go with, kind of our individuality and how we can express that? And there's an argument for both sides of that. But actually, when you think about clothing, you can even, even if you wear traditional clothing, you can start to kind of play with accessories and all sorts of different things that will help you express yourself in a different way, whilst kind of sticking to traditional clothing, really, really interestingly. One of the other things that is also really important is creating different states. So how would you feel wearing certain clothing? And I don't know whether you played with this at home or whether you tried on different clothing to see how you actually feel and what sort of states certain clothing creates. Because what you do is essentially you assign meaning to clothing. So basically, through associations, you are going to feel different in formal clothing than you feel in casual clothing. Just giving you an example off the top of my head, thinking about Elvis Presley, I remember Elvis Presley saying when he became famous and then he became wealthy, that he said he was never ever going to wear jeans or denim ever again in his life because it really reminded him of being poor. And he said he really didn't like the feeling of that because when he was working, he was always wearing jeans and he was always wearing denim. And at the time, he said he was always going to wear beautiful clothes and never going to wear jeans ever again. So it's the associations that we build with clothing. And sometimes it's not even the clothes, it's not even the piece of clothes. Sometimes it's the fabric that gives us that association. So there's certain fabrics that make you feel more expensive, make you feel, say, like $1 million, make you feel really, really elegant. And through the texture and the, you know, the certain feel of that fabric it becomes really, really important when we actually wear different clothes. The other thing about all of this is that there are a lot of studies now into whether it's important for people to actually go into a brick and mortar setup as an actual shop on the high street to buy clothing, or whether people are happier buying clothing online when they can't actually feel the fabric and feel the materials, and they can't actually see how certain, you know, kind of certain pieces of clothing look in different lights and things like that. Because for some people, it's very, very important to actually buy clothing in person in a store rather than go online. And, you know, the impact of online shopping on the environment and sending materials back and sending clothing back is again a really different issue. And fashion is really moving into a direction, although quite slowly still, where they need to iron all of these issues out because it has a huge impact on the environment. But psychologically, it really helps for us to kind of feel certain fabrics and things like that, because sometimes something can look good online, but when we actually receive it, we don't tend to like the feel of the clothing. Really, really interesting, all of this. Beyond creating your kind of state of mind and the feeling and how you actually feel in clothing, there's a concept called enclothed cognition, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. There's also the debate in terms of whether it's important for us to belong, to blend in, if you like, in certain situations with the group and with other people around us and how they dress. So my question to you is, you know, reflect on how you do this. Do you, you know, prefer blending in, or do you prefer standing out? And what sort of context, you know, makes that relevant for you? So how is this becoming more kind of comfortable for you to actually stand out from a crowd that dresses very, very differently to you? Do you actually then prepare in advance your clothing? So when you think about getting ready for the day, getting ready for the next day, getting ready for, something important? Do you prepare your clothing in advance? And I'm going to talk about President Obama and some other people who pay a lot of attention to preparation in advance and thinking about their clothing in advance so it doesn't distract from their decision making. And then the future trends and what we are actually looking at and what you should be doing for yourself. Now, the first thing before I move on is to get you guys to think a little bit more. And what I want you to do is think about the following question. What do you think we communicate through clothing? What do you think we communicate through clothing? So the clothing we wear. And I've given you here a QR code, and if you scan it, you are going to be able to get to Mentimeter. And I'm really interested in finding out what you guys think, and I'm going to share this with you as the answers come in. So please take a couple of minutes to put your answers in. I think you can put in something like up to 10 answers for this question. So what do you think we communicate through our clothing? Let's have a look at what you're writing. So if you click on the QR code, it will come in through Mentimeter. And it's upgrading as I'm looking at it. All your answers are coming in. Let's have a look. Okay. A lot of you are saying it's confidence, it's personality, it's mood, culture, likes or dislikes, attitude, taste, emotional state, feelings. Okay, social standing and social class. Okay, really, really interesting. Okay, let's see what else. Let's see what else is going on here. Attractiveness. Okay. What else? Let's have a look. Personality, mood, culture again, character, politics, political standing. That's really interesting. I don't know who put that in, but the political standing is a really interesting one because apparently people did a study on handbags, and certain handbags communicate really conservative political standing, tend to be designer handbags. It's really, really interesting. So let's just have a look to see if you guys can see it. So profession, seriousness, attitude, preferences, culture, boundaries, whether you're formal or not, social standing, work profiles, all of these things. Whether somebody is aggressive or approachable, how they actually feel. You can communicate your identity, ways of cooperation, really interesting. Personality. It could talk about your class. Yes, really interesting about first impressions as well. Okay. Confidence, how confident you are. Strength. Really interesting what we read when it comes to clothing, isn't it? Really, really interesting. And what sort of judgments we actually make. So this is very useful, actually. I love your participation in all of this. So, okay, so let's just have a look at what the clothing and the psychology of clothing really is, and all of these changes, how they impact us. So when we think about the psychology of clothing, it is a really complex topic, because it really taps into a lot of things. As you guys are saying, you know, it's all about first impressions, it's about culture, symbolism, what we symbolize through clothing. It taps into brain science as well, in terms of how we perceive things and how other people perceive us, and how we even perceive ourselves. Our emotions and identity and everything that we can express through clothing. It also influences our behavior. So it doesn't just make us feel a certain way, but we tend to behave very differently. And when it comes to self and identity, there are a couple of things here that I want to go through with you. So as I touched on it earlier, do you prefer standing in or standing out or fitting in? How do you conform in certain situations? You know, do you conform in certain situations and not in others? When do you feel like you can really express yourself here? Really, really interesting. Do you find it important to express your cultural identity through the clothing you're wearing? And also, do you fall into these kind of gender roles? Or do your clothes reinforce the traditional gender roles and expectations? Or do they challenge and subvert them? So what I really want you to think about is all of these things in relation to you. So when it comes to blending in or standing out, could you just put in the chat what sort of situations would make you feel comfortable to stand out in? What sort of situations do you feel okay standing out in with your clothing? So not blending in with what everybody else is wearing, but you feel like you can actually stand out. What sort of situations can you do that in? Okay, so we are starting with applying for a job. Okay, that's really interesting, because I'm guessing you want to kind of express your character and that you are different from other people. In situations when you are in a therapy situation, Kadneen, really interesting thought on that. Okay, so you feel like you can stand out when you need to give a lecture or chair a meeting because you are going to be heading that meeting. Interesting. Standing out in ceremonies where people are maybe celebrating you, really interesting. Festivals, you know, Halloween, all of that. Okay, so you're okay kind of standing out in situations like this, parties, social meets and group meets. Really good points here, guys. Very, very good. Now, I'm going to show you something about why we sometimes dress the same as other people. So really interestingly, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. When people wear the same clothing, actually, there was a study in the Journal of Applied Psychology that basically says we tend to want to be the same when we are trying to form a tribe or become a part of a tribe. So we want to feel like we belong. So for example, when you are in a new job and joining your new team, you tend to want to kind of blend in a little bit more before you find your feet. And then you can actually start to express your individuality. So people tend to go through a period of time when they actually want to find their feet first, and then they can actually start to feel that they can express themselves more. So it's more like a psychological need, and we want to feel comfortable that we belong. And then when we feel more comfortable, we feel that we can actually stand out more from the tribe, because remember, the tribe is all about safety. And people tend to help us or help each other more when they're dressing the same way. So it's all about a form of self-expression. and our psychological needs relating to what I talked to you about earlier already about the primal brain and the need for safety. Now, here's the question of casual versus formal. So there's a really good debate on this, and I showed you, my kind of approach to all of this as well. But here are some studies to this. So there are some studies that basically tell us that when we actually wear formal clothing, we have an enhanced ability to focus and to think in ways that are really, really beneficial for abstract thinking. Okay, so basically, when you are in the first part of your day, and we usually in neuroscientific terms, you are looking at the part of the day when you are about 8 to 9 hours after waking up, when you can really, really focus very well. If you actually go to the office, it could help you think and focus better if you're wearing formal clothing. So it will really help you focusing yourself more. Also, formal clothing, there's another study here for you that was done last year, and it basically showed that participants who swapped their normal clothing to formal clothing actually negotiated better. But when I mean better, they were asked to negotiate a biotech deal, and the people who actually dressed in a suit negotiated better deals to the tune of more than $2 million. And people who dressed casually, on the other hand, lost $1.2 million. So really interestingly, the study showed that the casual dresses, testosterone levels that actually help you focus better, the casual dresses, hormone levels, testosterone levels dipped by an average of 20%, okay? So wearing a suit and wearing formal clothing induced this kind of confidence and dominance, even on the hormonal level that obviously in the study they did not expect. So it quite surprised the people who actually run this study. Really, really interesting. I hope you find. Now, here is a word for casual clothing. So going casual can really help you connect with your team, with your teammates. So whilst formal clothing could be a really good idea when you are trying to focus on your performance, it really isn't a good idea to wear when you want to actually build a team, and especially a team that works in creative industries. So the studies found that people tend to be less open and find it more difficult to relax when they wear formal clothes. And when they actually wear casual and relaxed clothes, people become friendlier, they become more creative, they are better at coming up with ideas, and they also better at building teams. So when you're doing team building, and there's some casual days when people go out for team building exercises and activities, it's a really good idea to get people to basically wear casual clothing. And this is the whole idea behind, the casual Fridays that some companies do, because, after a work day, people go out and socialize together, and they really enjoy each other's companies better if they wear casual clothing. Now, wearing workout clothes, it makes you more likely to actually go to the gym because we are already wearing it, and it makes us to make better, it's kind of like a reminder to make better and healthier choices for ourselves as well. Really, really interesting, I think. So here's the included cognition idea that I wanted to talk to you about a little bit. So when people have been given a white coat to wear. So a doctor's coat or a painter's coat, they were told. So it was the same exact coat, but some of them were told that it was a doctor's coat, and some of them were told that it was a painter's coat. Now, when people were told that it was a doctor's coat, it had an effect on their attention, to the point when they could focus so much better when they were told that it's a doctor's coat versus a painter's coat. When it was a painter's coat, it didn't have an effect on their attention, but when they were told that it was a doctor's coat, they focused a lot better. So this is what we call included cognition. So actually, it describes the effect that our clothes can have on all of our psychological processes, including our behavior, our focus on emotions, our confidence. So we symbolize things to ourselves through clothing and through others. And this is one point about uniforms. And when people wear uniforms, we expect them to behave in certain ways. So we become very, very conscious of these psychological expectations towards others and towards ourselves. I really quickly want to touch on the same outfits. You can see some people wearing the same outfits. One of these people is Barack Obama, who said, I don't want to make decisions about what I'm eating or wearing because I have too many other decisions to make. So this lies in line with, for example, Steve Jobs. So we call this the self-imposed uniform. So this really helps with people eliminating decision fatigue and really focusing on other decisions in the day. So if you think that you have a really tough day coming up, I really invite you to think about your clothing in advance, and you know how you can dress yourself the day before. Think about all of this the day before, so you don't deplete your focus for the day when you actually really need to focus on more important things than that, because every single decision we make in a day starts to lead to decision fatigue. Really quickly touching upon colors. Colors have a very strong effect on us and on others and how they perceive ourselves. They even affect internal beliefs about ourselves. So there's something called dopamine dressing. And you know, overall, different colors can have a different impact on our self-esteem and how we actually feel about ourselves. And there's a kind of like a feedback loop that leads to good long-term benefits when we are wearing some colors that make us feel happier. Okay, so what can you do for yourself? So I really want you to think about purposeful dressing. So think about what you're trying to accomplish that day and then dress accordingly. If you want to focus, formal clothing will help you more. If you need relaxation, if you want to be casual, if you want to connect, then casual, more relaxed clothing will help you do that better. Clothing needs preparation, not just because it leads to mental fatigue making decisions about clothing, but it's also about really thinking about experimenting with your clothing, thinking about what sort of clothes make you feel a certain way. So think about it in advance and associate clothing with what you want to associate them with. Really think about how you can, what sort of clothes could you wear that would be your cloak of confidence? So if you want to turn up somewhere and you want to feel really confident, what sort of things could you actually pick up from your wardrobe that would allow you to make you feel like that? So here are some of the steps for you. So have a look at your wardrobe, think about what you're trying to accomplish, what sort of important things are coming up for you, and then experiment with sizes and colors, and think about just doing something different to what you have been doing before and how that makes you feel. And then, you know, really get rid of the clothes that you haven't been using for years, because it's very unlikely that you are going to be ever picking them up again. Now, that was a really quick overview of the psychology of clothing and the psychology behind what sort of effect it has on us. And I'm very happy to answer any questions you might have on any of these topics. Really, really exciting to see if you have any questions at all, or any comments on what I have been saying so far. So I'm going to have a look at the chat and the Q&A and then see if you have anything at all.
Hi, Professor. I think we
Sure.
have one in the Q&A. So
Okay.
from Atem Elijah Maluk, I'm so sorry if I said your name wrong. So how can you overcome the fear of formal presentation on the podium in front of many random gatherings?
Okay, so that's not really a question about clothing, but it's a question about, you know, kind of doing formal presentations. So what I would say to you is really is about practicing your presentation in advance, so you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, because the brain forgets very quickly. So after the first kind of minute of you starting your talk, you are going to get into a zone of talking, and you cannot rely on your memory to help you. So what you really need to be thinking about is giving yourself some reminders in terms of, okay, what am I going to be starting with, and where am I going? What am I going to be finishing with? And what's the midpoint? So remembering those three points. So start, finish, and then the midpoint. What is it that I definitely do want to cover in the middle? And then thinking about what's in it for your audience. It's not about you. People get very nervous talking in front of other people when they think about themselves a lot. So they think, okay, how do they perceive me? Maybe they are judging me. Obviously, they're thinking things about, you know, me and how I'm talking and what I'm talking about. But what I want you to do is really get out of your own head and get out of your own way, in a sense that I really want you to think about what's in it for the other people you are actually doing the presentation for. So obviously, when you're standing up in front of people, you need to think about those people. You need to think about, you know, what's in it for them. And I think when you think about that, you will start focusing better and it will be flowing better. So structure is really important. Practice is really important. But most important than anything else is what's in it for your audience and what's in it for them. And take the limelight off yourself, because that will really, really help you. Okay, any other questions? Yes, okay, so really helpful in terms of, you know, kind of what I can see is you are going for interviews and things like that, so it's getting you to think about how to dress for these situations. Absolutely. I would do some research in terms of the company culture and what's expected and things like that for interview sessions. It's really, really important. Okay, any other questions?
So we have a couple more in the Q&A box.
Sure.
Professor, do you want me to read them out loud for you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so from Atul Kaushal, do you think that first impressions due to clothing could create biases that could be difficult to break? Is clothing that important?
First impressions due to clothing could create biases. Absolutely. I mean, people will be judging other people. And this is why I said to you that this is perfectly normal. It's a normal human behavior and you can expect it. And, you know, and I think, you know, there are people who are more kind of culturally sensitive, they're going to be more open, you know, depending on, you know, on people's belief systems and people's experiences. Some people are going to be more open and others going to be more kind of traditional in their clothing. Totally, you know, you are going to be pushing boundaries with some people. It's going to be different in every situation. Anything else?
Yes, we actually have a couple good ones. I hope we'll be able to get to
Sure.
all of them. So, Ua Unaba Opara is asking, what's the trade-off between dressing for confidence and dressing appropriately, especially when you have the final say on what to wear? For instance, as a consultant meeting a client, corporate casual may be your confident look, but they expect business formal.
Yeah, so you need to, this is what I was saying, that you need to do your research. You really need to think, okay, what is this corporate expecting? What's their expectations? What's their norm? Because, for example, to a financial services meeting, you don't want to be turning up in a hoodie, but equally in a, a kind of, I had clients I was working with that was an advertising agency and everybody was wearing t-shirts and jeans. You don't want to be turning up in a suit. So you really need to be thinking about what's appropriate and what expected by them. Okay.
Thank you, Professor. So I
Okay.
think we're going to have to reach one more, and that will be it for today. So why, from Stefan Ozioma, why do some organizations sometimes wear casual clothing, but expect their interviewees to put on formal clothing?
Okay, so this is about the stages in terms of your employment. So they might expect you to come to the interview in formal clothing, and some of the people who are going to be interviewing you are also going to be wearing formal clothing. But they actually then, once you're within the culture of the organization and you're going to team meetings, they're perfectly fine with casual clothing. It happens a lot, and it's something that you really need to be very sensitive about when you are coming into certain companies and what the expectations are. I mean, you can most certainly push boundaries, but it's risky. You need to think about what the expectations actually are, because it's not risky in a sense that because everybody gets judged on their clothing, but the thing is, it's not risky in a sense that what they think of you, but it's risky in a sense that you won't feel that you belong. So you're going to feel like you stand out, and that feeling, if it leads to stress, then that might take your focus away from the actual focusing on the interview. So you need to be very careful about, am I okay to stand out in this particular situation with my clothing? And is that going to be destructive for me, because I'm going to feel stressed because I feel like I'm standing out in a kind of like a wrong way for me, because it's stressing me out. And then I won't be able to actually focus in terms of the cognitive task that I'm facing, which is the interview itself. So you need to be just really careful when it comes to some of these things.
Thank you so much, Professor. And thank you everyone for joining us today. So as we said before, there will be a recording of this webinar that will be sent up to you in a follow-up email. If you have enjoyed this session, make sure to go to our website at halt.edu/events and register for as many of our upcoming events as you would like.
Thank you so
That's
much,
all for
everybody.
us today. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much. It was lovely seeing you participate and working with you today. And I really hope that I'm going to see you at Halt at some point. And if you do come, then please come and say hello to me. I would love to meet you all in person. Take care, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you.